Hey everybody, welcome to Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. This is episode number 182 of our YouTube channel and podcast, and I cannot be more excited to continue sharing with you guys personal finance topics that I think can be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. Today, we are going to continue our conversation on millionaires and millionaire status and becoming a millionaire, and we are going to talk about, is $1 million enough to sustain us through retirement? Is $1 million enough to retire on? I kind of leaned on this question a little bit towards the end of yesterday's episode, but I really want to dig in, talk about why I think what I do about the $1 million number and why it may not be as illustrious as we make it out to be, or it may be just as illustrious as we make it out to be, but it is going to depend on you. Before we get started though, if you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcast, then be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, and that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to help you to stay accountable to a long-term financial plan and create a plan that is specific to you and your family's needs, then I can help you with that. Just go to my website, www.mnowithdylan.com. Click on the Work with Dylan tab, and you can choose the financial coaching session type that would work best for you, and we can begin pushing towards your long-term financial goals together. Now, $1 million is a big goal, right? It is a big milestone when it comes to saving for retirement, when it comes to investing, when it comes to your net worth, all of these different things, right? And the question that comes up most often is, well, is it enough, right? We know that $1 million used to be enough, but is $1 million still enough for individuals to go and retire on? And people really worry about the fact that $1 million is probably not enough. And in most cases, right, I would say that there is a high likelihood that $1 million is not enough. But there are some cases where $1 million is more than enough. And there are also some cases where you don't even need $1 million to retire in a comfortable way. And you may say, well, why is that? Why does it depend that much? Well, it depends on what you have, right? And it depends on what stage of life you are in when you retire. It depends on what your streams of income are, what your expenses are. It depends on a lot of different things because nobody is exactly the same. No two people have the exact same situation that they're working through when they go to enter retirement. So the answer to is $1 million enough? It depends. So for some people, $1 million in savings and the annual interest that it may earn, right, it can be plenty. But others might need more. Tempting as it is to put a single number on retirement, the answer to how much you'll need to retire on is really left up to you and how you lead your life and the life that is expected as you move into your retirement years. Okay, retirement planning isn't about just your portfolio. It's about deciding on a lifestyle and a legacy that will make you happy and ensuring you have the means to achieve them. And that is what we have to remember. We have to remember that retirement isn't all just about a number, and it's not being successful when it comes to your finances in retirement. It's not just about the number that you expect to retire on and living on that number. It is about what you expect to do with your life during your retirement years. And so we have to be cognizant of that. We have to be cognizant of the fact that asking if $1 million is enough is like asking somebody if driving a two-seater vehicle is enough, right? Well, if it's just you, then 2 seats might be perfectly fine. But if you've got a family of 4, then no, you can't have a two-seater vehicle, right? You have to have some bigger SUV, something that is going to be accommodative to what you need. In the same way with your money, right? You may need something that someone else doesn't need. And you may seem to be in the same situation as someone that you know, but your situations may be very, very different based on just some basic factors of lifestyle, some basic factors of your income, and different things that you are going to have to take into account going into retirement. So primary factors to consider when you're trying to determine if $1 million is enough to retire on is your current age and the age you wish to retire at, right? That has to be part of the calculation because if you don't know when you are going to retire, then you also can't come up with a reasonable basis for how long you will be retired, which is going to be extremely important when we're talking about living on some sum of money, some nest egg, right? We need to know approximately how long are we expecting to be retired. And we also need to know, what your age is now when you currently get to the $1 million mark, and see if you can accumulate more between now and retirement. And also you need to take into account the age of your spouse if you are married. Obviously that is important as well. So that is important. Your expected lifespan, like I just said, based on your family and personal medical history, is extremely important. Obviously you can't choose your lifespan, so there's no way to exactly know that, but to have some basic ideas. That way you can know what your healthcare costs may need to be projected at, or what your long-term care costs may need to be projected at. That's very important. Your post-retirement goals, right? If you're going to travel a lot, if you're going to be very generous, if you're going to be really philanthropic in retirement, then we need to know that, right? You need to know that those are your goals. Where you're planning to live is also very important, because if you're planning to live in a paid-off home that you've had paid off for a long time, and you don't have to pay anything on your personal residence, then that's going to be very important. If you're living in a place with a low cost of living relative to other places, that can be very telling. And then obviously the opposite is true for both of those situations as well, right? So where you plan to live is a big deal. What type of home you'll have is also a big deal, right? Are you going to have a home that is going to require, as you get older, someone to come and clean it, and you pay for that person because the house is too large? Or are you going to live in somewhere small? Or what type of home are you going to have? Whether you plan to work during your retirement years is very important, because that is going to add to the income portion of everything we've been talking about, right? If you plan on working, then that is going to increase your income, thus decrease your need in retirement. And so that will make it to where $1 million may be more than enough for somebody if they are working. Now, sources of retirement income such as 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs, Social Security, stocks, savings, pensions, rent and royalties, inheritance, annuities, insurance, all these different things that are going to bolster the income side of your portfolio will be able to tell you if $1 million is enough. Because the more money you are going to be able to bring in, right, the more money you're going to be able to put in your pocket monthly during retirement, the less money you're going to need off of your investments. So if you own rental properties, then having some rents from those rental properties is going to be a big part of the income that you're bringing in. And that's going to have an impact on what you need off of your investments. Like we said, if you have pensions, right, a pension can be a big part of your income and can really impact whether or not $1 million is enough in your retirement accounts. Obviously, inheritance is a huge deal, because if you inherit a large sum of money, then the amount of money that you need to save can be diminished. And then, if you have any type of insurance that you collect on, maybe for a spouse that passed away or something like that, then that will definitely play in to the mix. And then lastly, obviously, Social Security is going to play into the mix, because that is an entitlement benefit that you receive as a working American, right? And so to receive that Social Security is going to decrease the amount of money that you are going to need in retirement. So all these things play a part, and you just have to determine how big a part they play, and whether or not it makes $1 million enough or not enough, or whatever in your particular situation. Now, even in lieu of all of these factors, of all of these things that may impact the amount of money that you are going to have in retirement, Americans seem to still have this idea of $1 million being enough. More than half of Americans, 6 in 10 or 58% of Americans still think that $1 million is enough for a comfortable retirement. That is according to a TD Ameritrade's 2019 Retirement Pulse survey, which surveyed 1,015 U.S. adults ages 23 and older with at least $10,000 in investable assets. So you're actually asking people who have investable assets, actually have money to invest, have money to put away, or have money that is put away, whether or not you think $1 million is enough. And the majority of them said that, yeah, I think $1 million is going to be enough to retire on. Now, although $1 million is the most cited value that people ask about, is it enough or is it not? It might not be. On average, $1 million investment nest egg will last 19 years, according to a 2019 report from personal finance site Go Banking Greats. And depending on where you live, retirees could blow through $1 million in as little as a decade. So that kind of goes back to one of the factors that we talked about, right? Where you live, where your home is, how high is the cost of living where you live, and what kind of impact is that having on your nest egg? What kind of impact is that having on your ability to retire and retire in a comfortable manner? Now, of course, everyone's individual situation is different. It's certainly possible to retire with $1 million in savings, and many Americans live on much less. Many of the people who do decide to retire, many people who decide to retire in America today are living on less than $1 million in retirement. They don't have $1 million nest egg. And so that tells us that, yes, it can be done. But the question comes like, what are the costs of not having at least $1 million nest egg? What are the costs of not building up a retirement nest egg that is going to sustain you that well? Like most of these people, this would just be my guess, this is just some conjecture, I think that these individuals likely are living on less money in retirement than they lived on while they were working, which nothing is absolutely wrong with that. Like you can do that, that's fine. But a lot of people want to live lavishly in retirement. They want to have a really nice retirement. And in order to do so, right, you need to have the money to do it. And a lot of people just get into this place where they get to retirement and it's like, I just don't want to work anymore. I just want to survive. Or I can't work anymore. I just want to survive. And that's kind of a sad place to be. And I don't want you guys to be in that place. I want you to be in a place where you are actually thriving in retirement and meeting the needs of whatever you have, right? If you have enough money and $1 million is not necessary, then by all means live on whatever you have, and I'll be really happy for you. I'll be happy that you can live a comfortable retirement. If you're somebody who you don't plan on getting a pension, you don't have any other type of external help coming, then maybe you build up a $3-4 million nest egg for yourself, and that works for you. Different things work for different people, and I want to make that clear. That's the big idea behind today's episode is the fact that it depends. Whether or not $1 million is enough really depends. Now, I will say if you go from nothing, right? If you go from absolutely zero and you need an amount of money to live on, and you're not going to get any other help other than this lump sum of money, $1 million is probably not enough. Right, especially if you live an average American lifestyle, most people are making $60,000 a year. You want to buy the things that you want to buy. You don't want to really skimp. You want to live a relatively comfortable lifestyle. $1 million is probably not going to be enough in retirement, right? But any external factors that can impact that need do have to be taken into account. And that's why the answer changes from no, it's not enough to it really depends. Now, what are things that we have to do to make sure that our retirement is comfortable? Okay. Or what do we have to do to make $1 million more and more feasible as a retirement savings goal? Well, really, if you walk down the financial action plan, you will see the things that I believe are paramount in your ability to save money for retirement and to get to where you need to be in the long term. Starting with the fact that you got to get out of debt. You absolutely have to get out of debt, because we've talked about this before, right? When it comes to saving money, there's an income and an outgo side, right? You have the income that you bring in and you have whatever your expenses are. Well, in the same way in retirement, you have income and you have expenses, and both of them impact what you need in retirement, right? Because if you say, oh, I'm going to take $100,000 a year in retirement off of my nest egg, well, you have to have the nest egg to take $100,000 a year off, right? But then the question becomes, what are you taking the $100,000 a year off for? Because if your expenses are really high in retirement, that may be the reason that you need more income. That may be the reason that you need to take that $100,000. And maybe if you decreased your expenses, you would be able to live on less. You would be able to take less money off the nest egg, therefore needing a smaller nest egg, right? So if you get out of debt, what does that do? Getting out of debt decreases your expenses. And if you're out of debt, then your expenses will not have such a bearing on your income. Then your income can be something that is reasonable and chosen by you and your spouse, or just you. If you're single, then you can make that decision. You can make that determination as to what your income is and not have it just be predicated on the debts that you have to pay. And so maybe you can need less if you do get your debts paid off. Okay. Now, also, if you're going down the financial action plan and you actually get to the point where you're saving at least 15% for your future, right? You're saving at least 15% of your income, of your household income for your future. That is going to get you to a pretty nice place. Okay. Getting you to the point where you are saving that much for your future is huge. It's absolutely huge. And the $1 million number is going to look real small if you're saving 15% of your income as an average American, right? Most people who are saving that much and do it for a long period of time can end up having a lot of money in retirement. And so what does this really look like? What does it look like to be putting away 15% of your income for your future? Yes, 15% is a lot. I know it is. But if you can get to that point, you're going to have a lot of money set aside. So let's say you're just an average American that makes $60,000 a year, right? That's about the average or the median as far as household income goes. Well, if you make $60,000 a year, 15% of that annual income is $9,000 a year. Well, $9,000 a year broken down monthly is $750 a month. If you can put away $750 a month, let's say you're a 25-year-old, you got a good $60,000 a year job. If you can just put away that $750 a month and do it until you're 65 years old, when you're 65 years old, based on long-term stock market returns, you're going to have over $4.7 million to retire on, right? And $4.7 million, that's over 4 times as much as $1 million, right? And that really leaves you a lot of margin to determine what kind of life you want to lead and what kind of retirement lifestyle you want to have. The reason that step is there, that sixth part of the financial action plan, and the reason I say 15% is because 15% should get you to a pretty comfortable number, especially if you start early enough, like I just said in that particular example. 15% is a good number. And so you can save 15% and get to a very comfortable number. Now, that's not all about just getting to the million. Yes, $1 million is a big deal, but getting to that, $2, $3, $4 million number can really get you to a comfortable retirement lifestyle in a hurry. So that is something that you should really take to heart and really try to get to that point. If you say, man, I don't know if I can do 15%. I've told you before, try to start as small as you can and work your way up to the 15%, because the 15%, as I just showed you, as early as possible as you can get that going, the more likely you're going to be able to live a comfortable retirement lifestyle. Okay. And so saving that 15% is a huge deal. Then parallel with that in the financial action plan is getting your home paid off, right? That was one of the factors that I talked about earlier that can impact whether or not $1 million is enough, is your home, right? What kind of home are you going to live in? Where are you going to live? Are you going to live in a paid off home or a home that you're currently paying on? Well, I tell you in that part to simultaneously, while you're paying 15% towards your future, you're investing 15% towards your future, also be putting extra money towards your mortgage. Get your mortgage paid off early. And the reason that is so important is back to the debt argument, right? If you can decrease the amount of expenses that you have in retirement, you decrease your need for income in retirement. And when you decrease your need for income in retirement, you decrease your need for more and more in the way of a nest egg. And so $1 million can be far more reasonable as a number to retire on if you have very low expenses, if you have your home paid off. And we know that housing is one of the largest expenses that we all have month to month. Well, if you can get rid of that, then you can really get rid of your need for a lot of income in retirement and make $1 million look a lot more pleasing to the eye than maybe it did before. And so paying off your home is an absolutely huge deal when it comes to getting to a retirement number in a quick fashion that you can go ahead and retire on and live on over the long term, whether it's $1 million or not. Now, then I tell you in the eighth part of the financial action plan to max everything out. And so this is really just to pour money into all the investment accounts that are available to you. That way, you can have as much money saved up for retirement as possible. And this is really to, especially if you started late. If you started a little later, this step is going to be huge for you because the later you start, the less effective the 15% step is going to be. The less effective it's going to be putting away just 15% for retirement. But you get to that part where you've got all your debts paid off, you've got your home paid off, you're already putting away 15%. Now we're just working to max everything out as much as we can. That is going to become a huge part of your nest egg, and it's really going to help you to build up the assets that you need. So you can see that the financial action plan is set up so that we don't have to ask this question. We don't have to ask this question of, is $1 million enough? You need to determine what is enough for you and work towards that goal, or really work past that goal. Right? I've said before, if you have too much money in retirement, if you have more money in retirement than you're going to need or that you're going to live on, guess what? You can give more. You can choose to spend more. You can do things for your kids and grandkids. You can leave a legacy in a way that maybe you never thought you could, right? But if you don't save enough, you're going to be up a creek without a paddle. You're going to be in a tough position if you do not save enough. So I would rather overshoot the target than undershoot the target, right? We want to have these conservative estimates of what we may need, therefore increasing the number that we think we're going to need, and work towards that, not just some bare bones what we might need in retirement. Now, when it comes to a goal, right, what should the goal be? What should the retirement goal be for what we really want to have saved? Well, we'll talk about this later this week when we talk about our retirement number and our millionaire number, and whether or not we can actually get to that place in a reasonable time period. And that's a pretty simple idea. That's just taking, whatever income you think you'll need in retirement and dividing it by the rate of return that you think you can earn on your nest egg. And that should get you where you want to be. But some people take that and they, maybe simplify it a little bit, maybe make it a little more straightforward as to what you may need, and not requiring as much forecasting out of you as far as rate of return and income goes. And they say, okay, when you are 30 years old, by the time you're 30, have your starting salary saved, right? Have your salary one time saved, have it invested, right? And that's a pretty reasonable goal by the time you're 30 years old. Then by the time you're 35, have 2 times your salary. By the time you're 40, 3 times your salary. By the time you're 45, 4 times. 50, 6 times. 55, 7 times. By 60, 8 times your salary. And by 67, have 10 times your salary saved. And obviously you can move that scale up or back based on when you plan to retire. But that just kind of gives you benchmarks to hit along the way. That gives you things that you can actually say, okay, I'm hitting this mark, I'm hitting this mark, I'm hitting this mark, and eventually I get to 10 times my salary saved. And the reason that 10 times your salary is a pretty common thing to run across is because long-term in the stock market, you've been able to earn about 10% per year. Okay, now that's not to say we want to remain fully invested in the S&P 500 in retirement. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, right? But let's say you did. You could earn potentially 10% per year over the long term. Well, if you have 10 times your salary invested, 10 times your salary set aside in your nest egg, then if you just make 10% on that nest egg, right, then you can provide yourself with that salary year over year and never fall below the principal value that you had invested. You will just be able to take off that 10%. Now, obviously, the stock market is not that clean. It doesn't work that perfectly, but that is a decent theory, and it can allow your money to last a relatively long period of time if you are invested in the stock market. But let's say the highest salary you get to is $150,000, which is a very very handsome salary, very nice salary, right? You have 10 times that, that's $1.5 million in a nest egg. Well, let's say that you were that person earlier that started at age 25, putting $750 a month away to invest for your future. Well, you would have 4.7 million. So think about 4.7 million versus the 1.5. You may think that 10 times your salary is a lot to have saved. And don't get me wrong, it's a large number, especially if your salary is pretty high. But it is doable, and you can surpass it multiple times over, right? If you did the $750 a month, we're talking you're going to have 3 times as much money if you had that $150,000 salary and you save 10 times as much as that, right? You'll have 3 times that 1.5 million when you retire, which is going to be really, really nice for you to choose what to do with, right? Again, we would rather have more money and more options than not enough money and no options, okay? We need to be able to make these decisions in order to get us to the place that we want to go over the long term. So how do you get on track, right? If you're not here where you're like, oh, well, I'm on track to hit this $1 million number and break through it or hit my goal, right? And maybe $1 million isn't enough for you and you really, really do need to catch up, right? Well, most Americans, 62% of them, feel like they need to catch up on their retirement savings, so you are not alone. If you feel the same, there are strategies you can use, like setting up automatic contributions or increasing your income that will help you get to or nearer to where you need to be. So some things that you can do for yourself are set up automatic savings, like in your employer's 401k, setting up a Roth IRA for yourself if you qualify for a Roth IRA, and putting money away in that systematically where it just comes out of your account. Taking advantage of employer matches, like I said, as a part of the financial action plan, right? That's a really big deal. It can get you a lot of free money to allow you to catch up. If you're over the age of 50, take advantage of the catch-up contributions that are available to you in 401ks, IRAs, all of those different things. And really just look at all your options. And like I said earlier, you got to get out of debt, right? Because if you don't get out of debt, then you just can't save as much. I mean, it's just, you can't save as much, and it's going to be more expensive to live in retirement. So you got to get out of debt. You got to start putting away a large percentage of your income towards retirement, right? And I've said it before. When you get to saving for retirement, and you're looking for it, and you're going, man, I don't know if I have enough time. Well, there's a reason for that, right? Because time and compound interest work together. The more time that you have, the more time that is between you and retirement, then the more your money can grow over that period of time, right? There's a reason that those things are correlated in the way that they are. I just think that you have to understand that you either sacrifice now or sacrifice later, okay? So if you're young and you think, oh, well, I don't have to start saving for retirement now. Well, if you don't choose to do it now, well, you're going to have to do it even more later, right? You're not going to sacrifice the same amount later. You're going to sacrifice even more later to get to the same goal, okay? So you either sacrifice now or you sacrifice later. Or, you're somebody who's saying, I just don't feel the need to have $1 million invested for retirement. That seems excessive, and I just don't think that's what's best for me. And then you get to retirement and you realize you need more than $1 million, and now you're struggling to live in retirement. Again, you either sacrifice now or you sacrifice later. Sacrificing now is always, 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 always less painful than sacrificing later. So let's sacrifice now, get to that $1 million mark, and hopefully through that $1 million mark. And whether or not that is what you need for retirement, you will have a very nice amount of money set aside for yourself. But you should be sitting down, understanding what you are shooting towards, understanding what your goal is, and working towards that goal over the long term. And hopefully you can live a comfortable retirement and really experience financial freedom as you move forward. So is $1 million enough? It depends. But I know for me and my family, we are going to try to break through the $1 million mark several times over in order to live the most comfortable retirement and comfortable life over the long term that we want to live. So thanks for watching this video. If you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, then be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, and that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to help you to create a financial plan that is specific to you and your family's needs and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just go to my website, www.mnowithdylan.com. Click on the Work with Dylan tab, and you can choose the financial coaching session type that would work best for you, and we can begin pushing towards your long-term financial goals together. So tune in tomorrow as I talk about all of the things that are holding you back from becoming a millionaire and how we can get over some of those things and really get to the long-term financial freedom that we hope for. So thanks for tuning into today's episode of Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. God bless.